Hi guys, welcome back to Novel Thoughts. We're going to talk about Far From the Madding Crowd today by Thomas Hardy. So I actually just finished it, so I'm really excited to talk to you all about it. It's also considered a classic, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about why it's considered a classic later on in the video. Far From the Madding Crowd was Thomas Hardy's fourth written novel, but his first popular success, which is why a lot of people are going to know the title, but maybe have never read it. So when I decided to finally read the book, I really wanted to know where the title came from, and I found my treasury of classic poetry is coming in handy. Anyway, it's actually from a poem by Sir Thomas Gray. It's his most famous poem. It's called Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. At one point, he has a quatrain that has the phrase, far from the madding crowd. So what the heck does that even mean? When I first came across the word madding when I was in high school, I actually thought it was maddening, and so I said the title wrong for years. And finally, when I realized it was madding, I was like, that's not even a word, Thomas Hardy. And then I realized that they basically mean the same thing. Madding is an older form of the word maddening, essentially, and it means frenzied. So, how this fits into the poem, a man, or Thomas Gray, sitting in a country churchyard, thinking about death, thinking about all the people who are buried in this churchyard who are probably poor, low-class laborers, and he decides that death is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you were wealthy, it doesn't matter if you were poor. He then starts to explain a little bit about the potential they may have had. So how is this poem related to this book? This starts to get into why it's a classic. Far From the Madding Crowd is a classic because of two main reasons. Actually, there's a ton more than that. It portrays one of the first modern female empowered characters, and second, it champions the lower classes. So Bathsheba loved in the way that only self-reliant women love when they abandon their self-reliance. When a strong woman recklessly throws away her strength, she is worse than a weak woman who has never had any strength to throw away. This passage is incredibly progressive. Let me go ahead and place it for you. This is shortly after Jane Austen. A lot of his main characters are women, and so he's showing what their lives are like, similar to Jane Austen. The only difference is he's doing it in an entirely different sphere from Jane Austen. But even so, this is definitely progressive. The idea that a woman can be assertive, independent, and free, and that that's a good thing to love in that way, is one of the reasons I adore this book. This is also considered a classic because it champions the lower classes. In the introduction, it says a little bit about this choice that Hardy has made to keep it amongst these people. It says, he used it to weave a universality of human sensibility. I think that that's beautiful. That's definitely what you find in this novel. A human experience that we can all relate to, because you don't have to be an aristocrat to find this. You just have to be a human being. So if you want a good classic and you want to know what to look for, I would suggest looking for female empowerment and universal human experience, whether it's low class or high class. So what's this book even about? That was my main problem when I tried to read this book, is I had no idea what the premise was. So basically, it's about a poor girl who gains an inheritance and becomes a wealthy girl. Her name is Bathsheba. She is followed, eventually, by three different suitors, Farmer Oak, Farmer Boldwood, and Sergeant Troy is third. That's basically the premise of the novel. What does Bathsheba do with all of these suitors? Does she even want to get married? Who does she marry? Is she happy? And how does she end up happy in the end? So it's set in a place called Wessex. Let me go ahead and show you this map that is put into the front cover of this book. So, don't be confused. Wessex, though a commonly used term, is not actually a real place. Thomas Hardy decided to take a place where he grew up. He put it into a category called Wessex. So what's the point of Far From the Madding Crowd? I'm going to go ahead and read you a very, very short spot to kind of give you an idea of what this book is all about. It says, love is a possible strength in an actual weakness. Marriage transforms a distraction into a support, the power of which should be, and happily often is, in direct proportion to the degree of imbecility it supplants. So this book is basically Thomas Hardy's take on what love and marriage should actually look like. So let's go ahead and talk about the characters. The characters are my favorite part of this book. One of the characters' name is Gabriel. Gabriel is Farmer Oak, Gabriel Oak, and I love his name and I love his character. He is my favorite character of this book. I'm going to read to you some of the qualities I've written down that I found him described as in this book. Farmer Oak smiles like the rising sun. He's dignified and calm. Farmer Oak is loyal. He's a very talented farmer. He is a hard worker. His virtues are like metals hidden in a mine. and he's very, very responsible. At one point in the novel, you'll notice that Bathsheba is frustrated with Farmer Oak because he wishes to do her good more than he wishes to marry her, which is absolutely ridiculous. Why wouldn't you want someone to care for your best interest? But needless to say, Farmer Oak is a selfless individual who is incredibly self-mastered and really does care more about Bathsheba and her welfare than he does about himself, his own suffering and pain, or even his position. Bathsheba is vain, very vain. She's proud, and she's hot-tempered, and she's rash. But even so, she's very, very brave. Here's where she comes into more of a modern woman model. She's a person who likes who she is confident in who she is, she believes in her capabilities, she's assertive, she knows what she wants, and she's very independent. She basically is a real person. They describe her as excited, wild, and honest as the day. At one point, she's described as a caged leopard, and you can just feel the energy rolling off the pages as you read about Bathsheba. She's a compelling character, but she's also infuriating. She is so annoying sometimes, but it's because you can see how much potential she has, and then she makes these stupid decisions because she's still just a 19-year-old woman. You know, she is very young, and she's full of hot rash qualities, but even so, she's amazing. One of the qualities I was most impressed with when I read about Bathsheba was that her philosophies follow her conduct. It's surprising that this should be pointed out, but I think Hardy's on to something. The idea that what she speaks and what she believes is what she actually does put into action is a very admirable quality. The next character is Farmer Boldwood. Now, Boldwood is one of those characters you really come to love because he's so very deeply feeling. Okay, so Boldwood is a stoic, silent, dignified loner. He doesn't pay any attention to anybody else. He is totally satisfied being isolated and just doing his work and being untouched by the likes of maidenhood. So now we're going to move to Troy. Okay, I hate Troy, but I don't think Thomas Hardy liked him either because the first 2 pages that describe who he is when he's introduced in the novel don't shed him in a good light. Troy is first described as peculiar and changeable. He's a flatterer. He's someone who is willing to lie to men sometimes, but to women always, which makes me so mad. He only thinks in the present. He has no care for the past and no conscience for the future. He likes to take responsibility for other men's virtues and shift off the responsibility for his own vices. He's a very talented soldier. He's very self-indulgent, and in this way he can love very passionately, but often it's fleeting, which is problematic. So finally, what's one thing I really, really love about this book, and one reason I highly recommend it to all of you? Yes, it's a gorgeous novel. It has some amazing commentary on female empowerment, what it means to love, what it means to have a healthy marriage, lower class laborers, and a lot of other things. It has amazingly written characters. They're very well developed and they're very deep. So what's the last thing that kind of is the icing on the cake? It's definitely how Thomas Hardy writes. Thomas Hardy writes gorgeous descriptions. At one point I was a little annoyed because instead of saying someone liked wisdom, he chose to say a phrase that said that they were of the Minerva disposition. But with all that put aside, it's still an amazing book. If you want to go ahead and start getting into classics, I would suggest this one because it was popular at the time period and it's popular now, which means it's a little bit easier to get into than a canonized novel that is totally unliked, but still canonized because it's important. So go ahead and check out Far From the Madding Crowd. It's an amazing book. Thanks for talking to me on Novel Thoughts, and I hope to see you back again. If you want to go ahead and subscribe, there will be a button that's right here. And I hope to see you guys again. Bye!